Hey, it's Phil from Euroheat, and today we're out at a project in Dalkeith in Western Australia, and I thought I'd give you a bit of a tour of this system, the project, why geothermal was chosen, everything that it does, how it works, and a few other bits of information that you might find interesting. This particular system is an open loop system, and we're quite lucky in Perth that we have this aquifer underground where there's 20-degree water roughly, which is an amazing source of energy. Like for heating, it's spectacular. 20 degrees, what a great energy source. It's really easy for heat pumps to make low temperature water, which we design our systems to, say 30, 35 degrees. But even if you had a higher temperature system, 45, 50, it would still work really well. And for cooling, it's really good too, because let's say it's 40 degrees outside, the water temperature, groundwater temperature is 20. So that means that it's easier for the heat pump to produce the cold water and reject the heat into the groundwater if that's what it needs to do. So the other option that could be used is a closed loop, which is more common around the world because not everywhere has this amazing aquifer underground. And that could have been used here too, but it wasn't because it's more expensive to do it that way. So we're quite lucky here in Perth that we can use that groundwater. And look, they both have their ups and downs, but we'll cover that at a different time. So here we bring up the groundwater at 20 degrees, and it comes through this heat exchanger on the left, the blue thing on the left next to the white box, which is the heat pump. So the groundwater comes through that, and then if we need to dump energy or pick up some energy, through this heat exchanger, the water travels in opposing paths, and it never actually touches. They go through separate plates, and that way they can transfer energy without actually the water mixing, because we don't want the groundwater to exchange with the system water. We want to control the system water, make sure it's high quality, and it looks after all of the parts and equipment in the system so that it can last a really long time. After the heat exchanger, we then go to the heat pump. And so this heat pump has, with our groundwater conditions of 20 degrees, we've got an output of about 65 kilowatts of cooling and about 85 kilowatts of heating. So quite a lot. But a lot of houses in Australia have quite high heating and cooling demands, whether it is because of the design, the aesthetics, there's a lot of glass, so it lets a lot of the sun in, or perhaps there's a pool which the owner would like to have at 30 degrees all year round, so it needs a lot of heat. So in Australia, we tend to use big heat pumps like this. In Europe, this would be a commercial heat pump, which would be used at a university or a hotel or a hospital. But look, they're great pieces of equipment because we have them here inside. This is an extension of an underground basement garage, and that's actually one of the reasons why this type of system was selected here. Because we aren't exchanging any air and we're only exchanging the groundwater, it means that we don't need to have the equipment outside, which we're used to in Australia. We have our air conditioning units outside and they exchange energy with the air. Here, because we're just bringing the groundwater in and these pipes, these white pipes on the left, it's all controlled, it's not affecting the rest of the environment, and that means that we can have all of our equipment inside, so it's hidden away and it's silent. So it doesn't annoy the neighbours, which is a really common complaint, air conditioning units, heat pumps for pools and hot water systems and floor heating heat pumps, all making noise, and then it's right on the boundary line next to the neighbour, blowing into their windows perhaps, and they get upset. So this perfectly eliminates that, and it means that aesthetically it's great too, because you don't have to try and hide these down a lane. It's not visible at all. So it's all hidden away in the garage and it's protected from the weather and the elements. So it means it's going to last a long time. So a geothermal system like this, you can expect to last 20 to 25 years, perhaps even longer if it's looked after really, really well. But look, that's an average lifespan of a geothermal system, whereas a typical air conditioning system has a expected lifespan of about 10 to 15 years max. So that's actually a really important point to consider when evaluating the payback period and the life cycle costs of these systems. But let's get back to this system. So we have the heat pump, and the heat pump is simultaneously producing hot and cold water. And so that might sound strange, right? That it's producing both heat and chill. But if you think about your air conditioning in your house or in your office, inside in summer, it's blowing out cold air from the grills into the room to keep the room cool. And outside, the outdoor unit, the condenser unit, is discharging heat. And so it's basically it's sucking the heat out of the room and discharging it outside. And that's the only way that those units work, is they can't reclaim any energy. They just have to discharge the energy they don't want. But for these systems, the way at Euroheat, how we set them up is we collect both the heat and the chill. So we have a tank full of cold water and a tank full of hot water, and the heat pump is heating and chilling those. And then we can use those on demand instead of, let's say, some other geothermal systems where you might, say, be producing hot water for the heating of the house or the building, and then the heat pump is just rejecting the chill. There's no option to recover that. But for this particular system, we've decided to use an energy recovery system, because that way we save on the running costs, and the payback period is actually much faster than if it was a traditional system where it's only producing, let's say, heat that we're using and then discharging the chill. And so that means that when we're producing, let's say, the chill for the air conditioning, and it's producing cold water, it's sending hot water to the tank, and for our system here, we're automatically sending that heat as soon as it's produced to the tap hot water tank, so for the showers and the kitchen sink and all the bathrooms. Then we're sending it to the pool, and it's automatically heating the pool and keeping that nice and warm, and it's doing this for free. So instead of there being another unit, another heat pump, let's say, heating the pool, we're taking the energy which would normally be discharged here and putting it into the pool, so it's free pool heating. So that means that we can factor that into our payback period calculations, and we get a faster payback period. It makes more financial sense. After the heat pump produces the heat and chill, and let's say we are cooling the inside, and then let's say the hot water tank's full and the pool's full of heat. They're at capacity, there's no more. Only then will we discharge the heat. So we activate that ground connection, the open loop, and we will start discharging heat into the ground. So on similar systems like this that we've been running for a few years, we know that sometimes we do have to discharge energy to the ground, but because everything's full, with the pool's at 32 degrees, 33 even, the hot water tank's full, and then there's still cooling demand inside, so that means we have to get rid of it. And we find that about 90 to 95% of the energy we can successfully recover, but it is very dependent on project to project, how much cooling is required, the design of the house, the heat loads, etc. So the heat pump produces the hot and cold water, and they get sent to the tanks. So behind me you can see 3 big tanks. They're 1,500 litres each, and so the one on the very right, that's the domestic hot water, the tap hot water, and so we store that at a roughly 65 plus minus a couple of degrees, and then we actually have a desuperheater function here. And what that does is it uses the hottest part of the refrigeration circuit inside the heat pump, and it extracts this high temperature water. So we can actually get it up to 85 degrees if we need to. The next tank along is the heating tank, so that's where the hot water goes from the heat pump, and then the tank on the very left is the cooling tank, so that's where the cold water goes for, say, the air conditioning and the floor cooling. Then next to that, we've got an array of pumps and valves. And the system's actually working right now, so you might hear sometimes some of the valves moving. It makes a bit of a slight robotic noise. I'm not sure if it's going to be picked up by the camera, but you might see them move a little bit. They move quite slowly. One's moving right now, actually. And some of those pumps are on. And the heat pump isn't actually on right now, but when it does come on, you won't even notice because it sounds sort of like a fridge, maybe even quieter than a fridge. But what happens is each of these pumps supplies a different aspect of, say, the building service in the house. So we've got air conditioning, heating and cooling here. We've got floor heating and cooling here. We've got some radiator heating here. We've got pool heating, if I haven't already said that. We've got cellar cooling and also the comms room cooling. And so each circuit can be individually controlled. So we might be sending 10-degree water to the air conditioning, and we might be blending the floor cooling water down to 18 degrees, depending on the humidity inside the house, so we don't have condensation on the floor. Then we have the radiator circuit, which has been designed for 45 degrees. The pool heating circuit, which has been designed for 40 degrees, and then the cellar and comms room cooling, which is going out at about 10 degrees too. Now we can change all of those temperatures with our mixing valves. So the orange motor heads with those handles that slowly move. And why they're moving is we're constantly measuring the temperature that's being sent out to each unit, and we have a specific set of requirements for the fan, like air conditioning, for the pool, for the cellar, etc. And so it's measuring the temperature of the water that's being sent out, and it's constantly adjusting it so that we get the right temperature being sent there. And why that's important is that we maximize the comfort. So instead of super cold water being sent to the air conditioning and then the air coming out of the aircon is really cold, it's a really comfortable temperature. And it's actually the perfect temperature that our control system, it's like a smart control system that takes in all these factors, the temperature outside, the temperature inside, the humidity, what we expect the weather to do that day, even what the solar system is producing, and we're calculating exactly the amount of energy or the temperature, the optimum temperature that should be sent to each of these elements, say the air conditioning or the pool or the floor heating or cooling. So in this house there are 13 fan coil units, which are air conditioning units, and people often ask, how is it different to standard air conditioning? And the best way to answer is it's not very different at all. It's pretty much the same thing, but just a little bit bigger. And the reason that it's a little bit bigger is that we might be sending 10-degree water to these fan coil units, to these air conditioning units for cooling. But for traditional air conditioning with refrigeration pipes and refrigerant, that refrigerant might be going there at 0 degrees. And so that means that they can send a lot more energy, or they can transfer a lot more energy to the air with a smaller air conditioning unit. So really the only difference is that the fan coil unit or the air conditioning unit is a little bit bigger. Otherwise, all of the ducting is the same, the grills are the same. So in this particular house, there's a few different styles of grills that the owner has selected depending on the room or the area of the house. Some of it's built into cabinetry work, some of it's in the ceiling, some of it's in the walls. But they're just the typical sort of high-end grill finishes that you would see in houses. For the floor heating and cooling, we have an insulated screed system. So there's the structure slab. On top of that, we have a layer of rigid thermal insulation. Then our pipes are fixed at a 150 millimeter spacing generally, and then a 100 millimeter spacing in bathrooms. And then this is covered by an engineered liquid screed, which we have at 40 millimeters thickness here. So we have 20 millimeters of thermal insulation and 40 millimeters of screed. And we find that's a good balance and a good mix for our climate here in Perth, where the 20 millimeter insulation in Europe, that laugh at us a little bit, that's so thin, it's not doing much. But we don't have the same temperature extremes as them, so we don't need to over-capitalize on the insulation. Sure, you can have thicker insulation, but if you did the numbers on it, you would find that the payback period for the thicker insulation might be in the order of hundreds of years. So, we try and always find the perfect balance for the customer, for the investment required and the performance and what you get out of it. And then on top of the screed, there's a few different finishes. There's vinyl, so like vinyl look timber, which people might find surprising, but it looks really real. It's quite nice. There's carpet, there is travertine, and there are just normal tiles. And so there's a range of floor finishes. With timber, there's no real timber floor finishes in this house, but it is possible to also have timber for the floor system. Now there's a few radiators in the house, so they're just your classic radiators that you would see in Europe. They're just to heat the rooms where there isn't floor heating, so the customer just wanted to keep nice and cozy in some of the rooms. Then we have a pool outside, which is, I can't remember, sorry, I've lapsed with the actual volume of the pool, but our pool heat exchanger is 30 kilowatts. And so we can heat the pool quite rapidly if we needed. A lot of people have the notion of they want to keep the pool warm all year round, but pools just lose so much energy, right? So in our opinion, it's better to size the system so that, okay, if they did want to heat the pool during winter for a party or something like that, okay, it's got the capacity to do it, let's say in 24 hours. So you just have to turn it on 24 hours before. Instead of having it running with, say, a smaller heat exchanger for, you know, all of the year, and then every day you heat the pool up and then it loses its energy overnight, and then you have to do the same thing again. So it's a bit of a waste of money and energy. And then here we're also cooling the cellar and the comms room, so there's a dedicated cooling only circuit just to take care of those. And then we have the domestic hot water tank with a ring main system. So we have a pump which is monitoring the temperature and sending water around the house so that there's near instant hot water available at all times. So this is a great system. The efficiency is really high because we're doing the heat recovery, because it's been designed and installed so that it can maximize. If it does have to interact with the ground, it can work at a really high level of efficiency. But is this the right type of system for everybody? Should everybody do this system? And the short answer is no. The reason is, here it makes sense because we've got the pool, and pools chew up a lot of energy. So here, having this sort of setup means that we can recover that heat, and it's free pool heating. So financially, the numbers stack up. Whereas, let's say if you did this exact system on another project where there was no pool, then unfortunately the numbers probably wouldn't stack up, and it makes sense to do other types of systems. So there are other types of geothermal systems that you can use. So you could have a heating only geothermal system where that might look after your pool and your floor heating, let's say if there's no air conditioning in the house. Or you could have a system where it does only your air conditioning, and basically they don't look too dissimilar from this, but they are a smaller, more condensed version because it's not taking care of as many of the building services. So to reiterate, this is an awesome system. It's fantastic. This is, you know, pretty close to the Rolls-Royce of geothermal, but it's definitely not for everybody. It's not the best solution for every single project, and I encourage you, if you're looking to use a geothermal system, when you're selecting the engineers and or the installers, and at Euroheat we are both the engineers and the contractors, you need to ask the hard questions, which are, what are the payback period? Don't listen to this, oh, it's going to cost you nothing to run. It's not true. There are still running costs. It's sure, it is more energy efficient and costs less than the alternative air source forms, but it's not free to run. You need to ask them, you know, can we use open loop or should we use closed loop? What are the ground conditions like? And make sure that they aren't just quickly saying, yeah, we can use open loop because it's cheaper, because the groundwater quality is not suitable everywhere. Here in Dalkeith, we're very lucky. The groundwater is crystal clear pretty much, so only a tiny little bit of sand comes up that we catch in the filter before it goes into the heat exchanger, and so that's basically the only maintenance that's required. Is once a year someone comes, opens a valve, the fine sand particles that are collected over that time are flushed out, and that's it, and it's good to go for another year. So if you're looking for a geothermal system for your project, for your building, for your house, whether it's residential or commercial, it doesn't have to be something like this, as elaborate as this with the heat recovery. It can be just a simpler form of geothermal, which does, let's say, pool heating or hydronic floor heating and cooling, or it might do only the air conditioning. Please do give us a call at Euroheat. We'd love to help you design and install a successful and maintenance-free geothermal heating and cooling system that will work silently, that will work automatically and efficiently for you every day of the year.